Okay, Z6 III, Z8. Just want to talk about these two cameras and pluses and minuses of each of them. So, I was hoping that this would be a 24 megapixel version of this, and it's not. Also, I was hoping that I'd be able to get a 24 megapixel version of this for, what, 2/3 the price? That didn't happen either. Well, I did pay 2/3 the price, but the major difference between these two cameras is that they hobble this camera in order to make this camera look good. And maybe that's not quite the right way of saying it. They need to be able to create a value proposition for the Z8, and they can't go and take too many sales of the Z8 away with the Z6 by making it too close. And so if anyone's asking which one should I buy, the only response I can have for you is the Z8 is a better camera. That's all there is to it. It's faster, it's, it just feels more peppy. It's a bit more flaky, as one of my other reviews, I talked about the fact that it felt a bit kind of unsorted, but regardless, it's a better camera. That said, this is a pretty serious competitor, and what I want to talk about is from my point of view, what the important parts are for me. First thing being, video is not a major, obviously we shoot videos, but video is not a major issue for me. I don't offer it as a service. I really don't use these cameras a lot for video, although I've got a bunch of Nikon F glass, old glass, that I'd love to do some testing with, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But what is better about the Z6 is that it actually has a mechanical shutter that I really like, and I know that that's kind of a bit sort of superficial, but this camera still feels like I'm not really taking a photograph when I take a photo, and this actually feels like I'm taking a photo. But the big issue with the Z6, the reason why I bought it is because it has fewer megapixels, and shooting a lot of stuff with 50 megapixel or 48 megapixel files means that you just fill hard drives up faster, computers are slower, customers are kind of weirded out because they get these monster images. And this camera, for a lot of the stuff that I do, a lot of the corporate work that I do, this fits the bill much better. And it means that I can be faster. It means that I can deliver things more reasonably. It also means that I do need a backup as well, and so it's a nice complement. I can get away, whatever I'm shooting with this, I can probably shoot with this without too much trouble. But as I say, they do hobble this camera a little bit. One of the things that is really interesting, and so hear me out, I shoot a lot of images tethered to a laptop, usually to a laptop, and I don't know why, but the file system in the Nikon is that if you have a card in the camera, it will somehow try and access the card when you plug it into the computer, and it will start sorting through. And if you've got a card that's 2/3 full or something like that, then things can get all snarled. So what you do is you pull the cards out of the camera. And but if you shoot with an empty card in the camera, I'm pretty sure it'll happen. It works with Fuji, and I'm pretty sure it works with the Z8. And I haven't actually tried this with the Z6. Is that it will write a copy to the card as well as writing one to the camera, to the laptop, which is really nice because then you have an automatic backup. And I guess if you had two cards in there, you'd have two automatic backups, which is a bit redundant, but there you have it. The drawback is that in order to format the cards, with this camera you push two buttons, hold them down, 3, 2, 1, format the cards. This one, the 2-button format doesn't exist. They took it off for I'm not sure why. And so that means you actually just go through the menus, and if you've got the camera plugged in, then then it can become a bit problematic. So there's stuff like that. The Z8 has an AF on button, or an AF button, so you can cycle through your AF modes. The Z6 does not. Both cameras use the same battery, so that's good. And the Z8 is actually just a little bit bigger, and it just fits in my hand just a little bit better. It's more comfortable. I can hold on to it for longer periods of time, especially if I'm shooting handheld. The Z6 is just a little small, to the point where I'm probably going to get the battery grip for this camera, even though I believe it costs an absolute fortune. What else was I going to say? Yeah, basically the Z6 is the mirrorless version of the 610, D610 or D600, for instance, or D750, and the Z8 is the mirrorless version of the D810 or the D850, and I guess the Z9 would be the mirrorless version of the D6 or the D5. And Nikon has done a pretty good job, I think, of getting them all, you know, positive and negatives. But I will say the 2-button format. I will say the viewfinder is the, you know, with the square, whereas the Z8 has the round viewfinder. So that, and this is a better high eye point finder. I think it has better coverage. It probably also, well, I mean, you don't actually see anything out of it because it's EVF, but it's more comfortable on the eye, I find anyway, than the Z6. But then, you know, but otherwise, you know, the cameras are actually surprisingly similar. And I think that, you know, I challenge anyone who's really struggling to decide which of these cameras to buy, even if money is not an object. I would suggest that you, as long as you can deal with the things that they have left off of the Z6, and as long as you can you can be okay with it, then you'll be safe with the Z6. I don't see, there isn't any major deal breakers with this camera that would make me not buy it, or would make me spend another, whatever the number is, $2,000 on this camera. But that said, when I was shooting a gig last week, it was on a construction site, lots going on, this was the camera I reached for, and the photos look great. So I suppose that says something about how much I trust this camera, you know, yet. But you know, like I've shot quite a bit with this camera. I've shot a fair amount with this camera, and both of them have been surprisingly reliable, and both of them have been surprisingly trouble-free. And as always, the only frustration comes when something comes up and you're like, oh, damn, how do I menu item, digging through, like that kind of stuff. But that's part of the thrill of having a new camera. That's not really anything to do with these cameras as you know, pieces of equipment. Yeah, so although the Z6 is, I mean, I wanted it because it was 24 megapixels. That was specifically why I bought it. It's a solid contender to the Z8. It's not the same camera. It isn't, air quotes, as good as the Z8, but then for a lot of what I shoot, that doesn't seem to make much difference. So I'm actually surprisingly happy with this camera. I think the Z6 is you know, I don't look at it and wince. I don't look at it and roll my eyes and wish it were something else. I'm very happy with it. And these two cameras with these lenses, 35, the 20, and I need to get a couple more, have actually, you know, it's been pretty seamless, relatively speaking, to get these cameras up and running. So yeah, so if you're wondering if the Z6 is worth it, I think so. If you're wondering if the Z8 is worth it, it's definitely worth it as long as whatever this doesn't have, you really need. And so, you know, what can I say? You know, if you can, rent them, try them out, shoot with them, and I'm pretty sure one or the other will speak to you pretty quickly. So there's my review, my comparison of my new toys.